in the centre. Hello everybody. We're still doing phrasal verbs today. We're going to be doing come phrasal verbs, and as you can see from the state of the board, it's a little bit cluttered up, so I'm sorry that I've done that. I'm sorry it's a little bit messy. There are a lot of phrasal verbs with come, just like there are a lot of phrasal verbs with go, and there are a lot of phrasal verbs with get as well. So it's actually there are a lot of phrasal verbs with get as well. So it's actually very difficult to make sure that I don't miss anything out. It's actually really hard to make sure that I don't miss anything out. If you go into bookshops, you'll be able to find phrasal verb dictionaries that are at least that thick. So there are a lot of phrasal verbs to learn in English, and if you only know 10 or 20, you need to start learning as many as possible. You don't need to, but it really will improve your English. It will improve it in the sense that it will make it sound more natural. So, I have a student actually who inspired me to start doing these phrasal verb exercises. And it's thanks to him really that I'm actually writing the book. So thanks Otto for encouraging me to do this. And Otto is very careful. He's a very meticulous student. He wants to know every single phrasal verb, and he wants to know every single meaning of every single phrasal verb, and he's in charge of making sure that I don't miss anything out in the exercises that I am writing. And I've tried to make sure that I've included the ones which he called me out on in the last class, because he noticed that I'd left out one or two. So let's start with come about. Come about means to happen unexpectedly, and it's very often used without an object. It's very often used in a question, something like this: how on earth did this come about? Meaning, how on earth did this happen? Exactly the same. How on earth did this happen? How on earth did this come about? But you could also use it in a sentence with an object if you use come about through something. So you might say this came about through the government's lowering of income tax or whatever. It came about for that reason. It happened for that reason. So come about through something is another one as well. And I want you to notice that with phrasal verbs with come, many of them are very similar to phrasal verbs with bring. Bring something about is to cause something to happen, to bring something about. What brought this about? What caused this? How did this come about? And this is the case with many other phrasal verbs with come and bring. You have come round and come to, meaning regain consciousness or be persuaded, but you also have bring someone round and bring someone to. And they both mean regain consciousness or be persuaded. So there are loads where bring and come are very similar. So it's well worth remembering that. It will help you remember several different phrasal verbs. So for example, to come off, it usually means to happen as planned, to happen successfully or to happen as planned. Now this is very similar to bring something off. And what you should be noticing here about bring and come is that the bring phrasal verb is usually transitive. Now all that means is that the bring phrasal verbs very often have an object. The come phrasal verbs very often don't have an object. Not always, but very often. So bring something about is transitive, come about is intransitive. Bring something off is transitive, come off is intransitive, but they both mean to happen as planned, okay? But you could also come off some medicine or some drugs, meaning that you no longer take that medicine or no longer take those drugs. So if you come off some kind of medicine, it means you stop taking it. But you can also say he came off better in the fight, meaning that he didn't have so many bruises on his body after the fight. He came off better. He won the fight. So you can come off better and you can also come off worse. And in that sense, I think it's quite similar to end up. He ended up worse. He ended up better. Yeah? And I wanted to remind you as well that go down is quite often happen as planned. So if you say the party came off well, the party went down well, both of them mean the party took place and it was a successful party. It went down well. The guests liked it. Yeah, that's what it means when you say the party went down well. If you say it came off, it just sounds successful. Okay, come up, a lot here. I want you to remember these phrasal verbs though: crop up, turn up, show up, because they're all related to come up. And you might talk about a lesson that's coming up later in the week. That means it's soon to take place. Or an election which is coming up. It just means the election which is soon to take place. So it could mean that. It could mean arise or appear. So we say that the sun comes up in the morning when it's sunrise, and then it goes down when it's sunset. So come up and go down would be the opposite. Okay, but it doesn't have to be the sun which is coming up. There could be many other things which just suddenly arise or appear. So it's very similar to crop up in this meaning. If you say a few difficulties came up when we were doing the project, or a few difficulties cropped up when we were doing the project, it means they arose, some problems arose. Okay, so I've said here as well that the sun comes up and goes down. I think that is related to arise or appear, because let's face it, the sun appears when it comes up. But just want to make it clear that the sun comes up, it's very different from the sun comes out. And that's our next phrasal verb, come out. When you say the sun comes out, it means it comes out from somewhere. So the sun comes out, it comes out from behind the clouds. And when you say, the sun will come out in a few minutes, it means the clouds will move along and the sun will suddenly appear. So this one means arise or appear, come out, but it means arise or appear from something, from behind something. We also say that flowers come out in spring, meaning flowers blossom. They come out, they arise. Okay, you might say from nowhere, but no, from the ground. They suddenly arise, they appear from the ground. So I think this come out, it's always from something, whereas come up just means arise or appear. So flowers come out, the sun comes out, the stars can come out. If the clouds are blotting them out, the stars can come out, or the moon can come out. So remember that other phrasal verb, blot something out, meaning to obscure it from vision. Clouds very often blot out the sun. Now, I keep telling everybody that very soon my book will come out. I will put it onto Amazon and I'll start to make it available for everybody to buy. So I keep telling you that I'm going to bring my book out. Look at that. Again, the come and the bring phrasal verb, exactly the same, but come is intransitive and bring is transitive. So my book will come out. I'm going to bring my book out. I'm going to roll my book out soon. So it can mean be published, but it can also mean arise or appear, like the sun comes out. And of course, you can ask your friend to come out, or ask your friend if he wants to come out. And that would mean to go out socially. Okay, I think we're going to have to make this 2 lessons on come phrasal verbs because there are so many. If you come across something or you come by something, you find it by chance, okay? You just find it by chance. Now, there are at least 2 other phrasal verbs which mean exactly the same thing, so these are direct synonyms. You could stumble on something, or you could happen on something, and if you want to make either of those sound a little bit more formal, use upon and not on. Stumble upon, happen upon. They also mean come across, come by something, which just means to find something completely by chance, accidentally, unexpectedly. Now you should compare these 4 phrasal verbs, which all mean find something by chance, with these 2 phrasal verbs, which mean find someone by chance. So these 4 are for things: come across, come by, stumble on, happen on, something, but run into someone, bump into someone. And lastly, there's also run across. Now, run across is a bit of both. You can run across someone or you can run across something. So you can find things or people by chance with run across, but run into and bump into, for me, they sound like you're dealing with people, and these 4 only things. Okay, So I hope you all, when you learn phrasal verbs, I really recommend that you don't just learn one each time in isolation. You need to learn it in terms of all the other phrasal verbs, which are very, very similar. And most people understand that turn on is identical to switch on, and they learn them both at the same time, and that's the best way to learn them. If you're learning them in isolation, it's not so effective. You really ought to learn come out with, bring something out, roll something out, and all the other phrasal verbs which are very similar. So if you're going to a party, a friend might come along. He might go along with you, in which case he accompanies you. Okay, so that's a nice easy one, come along. And down here, last one I'm going to do on this part is come at someone. Now that is the same as run at someone, fly at someone. At is a very aggressive preposition. Shout at, scream at, throw something at. There's a lot of aggression and anger in such a little word, at. So when you come at someone, you attack them. You could come at someone with a knife or run at someone with a grenade in your hand. You're attacking them in some kind of way. But also a second meaning of to come at something is to come at a problem. And so I might give you a mathematics problem. I might say something like, I've got £5.25, I've got twice as many 10p's as 5p's and twice as many 5p's as 2p's. How many 10s, 5s and 2p's do I have? And then I might say to you, how would you come at this problem? And you would have to explain to me your thought processes and your method for working out exactly how many 10s and 5s and 2s there are. So that would be the direction you come at the problem. So come at also collocates very well with problems and exercises. And so that's one which is certainly worth knowing. Now, somebody has just reminded me that somehow I have completely forgotten about come across as. And I have. And I wanted to put it in because it's definitely on my list, I know. So I'm going to have to just put it in down here in the corner. I hope you can all see this. Come across as, and I like to teach this one at the same time. Now, can you all see that? Let me see. Come across as, yeah. Come across as someone means to be perceived in that way. So you might say, he was in a really bad mood yesterday, and in the meeting, he came across as aggressive. Or he came across as a nasty man. And it just means everybody thought that he was nasty, he was aggressive, because of his tone of voice, because of his way of speaking. He came across like that. So come across as someone. Okay, now this is almost exactly the same as strike someone as. But they are different. They're two different ways of saying the same thing. You could say he came across as angry and aggressive, or you could say he struck me as angry and aggressive. Okay, so that's two different ways of dealing with that particular sentence. If you want to say that somebody appeared to be in a certain way, use come across as. He came across as. He came across as an idiot. He came across as a genius. He came across as whatever. Or he struck me as an idiot. He struck me as a genius. Okay? So I think I'll hold it there, but we're going to carry on. But I will split this up into two videos, I think, in future. Not sure. But let's go up to the top of the board now to come down with. Very famous one. I think most people know this one. If you come down with a disease, if you come down with flu, you catch flu. Simple as that. So come down with, it means to catch, to fall ill with. But you can also come out with. You can come out with a silly remark. You can come out with a stupid comment. And if you come out with something, you unexpectedly say that, yeah? But I want to warn you here that this is not the same as say. You can't say he came out with blah, 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 blah. We never do that. We say he came out with a stupid comment. He came out with the following remark or something like that. You don't normally say he came out with, I'm going. I don't think we usually do that. We don't normally actually quote what the person said. We don't report what the person said we've come out with. I think usually we say he came out with a load of rubbish in the meeting, or he came out with barbed comments, or he came out with I think it's usually negative, if I'm honest, with this one, whereas I think this one's usually positive, come up with. So if you say he came up with a great idea at the meeting, I'd never say he came out with it. He came up with a great idea. He came up with a good suggestion. He came up with a wonderful plan. So I'd say that one's more positive and that one's more negative, although they both mean to create some kind of idea or to mention something in a meeting. Usually they're about mentioning, but come up with collocates with idea, plan, suggestion. Come out with collocates with remarks, comments. Okay, let's come on to the next one. Come into something. If you come into a great deal of money, you inherit a great deal of money. If you say luck doesn't come into it, it means luck plays no part in it. So there are at least two meanings of come into. Normally it means inherit most of the time, but it can mean play a part in. So if I say luck doesn't come into it, it's only talent. Talent comes into it, but luck doesn't come into it. It just means it's all about talent. It all comes down to, somewhere down here, it all comes down to talent. Okay, if we say come out in, this is a medical phrasal verb again, like come down with. Come out in is for rashes. If you get a rash on your skin, which is a red mark on your skin, you come out in a rash. Or you break out in a rash. Or your washing powder brings you out in a rash. And look at that, that's another bring phrasal verb, which is very similar to the come phrasal verbs. So notice that they're very, very close, the bring phrasal verbs and the come phrasal verbs. And notice again, bring is transitive. It brought me out in a rash. And come has less objects, let's just say. It's just, I came out in a rash, but it brings me out in a rash. Okay, very common ones here. Come over to, go, come up to, go over to, go up to, walk over to, walk up to. They all mean approach in some kind of way. If you want to take a photo of the board, guys, just wait to the last second of the thing and I'll get out the way. Run over to, drive over to, walk over to, shoot over to. There's loads of ones involving this, usually movement, and they all mean approach something. Now, if you come round or come to, you regain consciousness, or you are persuaded. Somebody has talked you into doing something. Don't forget that one for persuade as well. So if somebody has talked you into doing something, you come round, you come to. But that person brings you round. That person brings you to. And thinking about it, it's only come round that means be persuaded, not come to. And it's only bring someone round, which means be persuaded, not bring someone to. Bring someone to and come to just mean regain consciousness. So I want to make that very clear. Now, if you come through something, you succeed in spite of difficulty. So you could come through a difficult divorce or something like that. Meaning get through a difficult divorce then. But yeah, I mean, if you say, I hope we come through this match, it means I hope we succeed, even though it's going to be a really difficult match. It's going to be very difficult to win, but I hope we come through. And it also means survive illness or injury. So if somebody is in hospital and they're having an operation, it may be touch and go whether they'll pull through, whether they'll come through. So exactly the same as pull through, really, to come through. And you should remember to see something through, which means to succeed with something that you're going to continue doing until you get to the end. It means you're going to be determined and you're going to complete something difficult. And get through something means get to the other side of something difficult. You know, manage to succeed with something difficult. You could get through a nasty divorce, for example, meaning you get to the other end and hopefully everything is all okay then. Now, if you come out against something, you publicly oppose it, very similar to speak out against. It's synonymous, in fact, exactly the same. You can come out against something, but you could speak out against something. If you say that the increase in global temperatures comes down to pollution, it means that you believe that pollution is what ultimately causes the increase in temperatures. But you might say it boils down to pollution. You also might say I put the rising temperatures down to pollution. Okay, it's just an example. It's not necessarily what I believe, but to come down to means to ultimately depend on or be caused by. And please remember it with come down to, boil down to, and put something down to, because they're all very, very similar. If you crack down on or clamp down on or come down on drug dealing in the city centre, it means you tighten laws and you make punishments more severe, more harsh, so that you restrict a certain crime or something bad that's happening. You want to restrict it. You want to tighten laws. You want to tighten your control of that particular crime. So it's a crime that comes after this one. Come down on prostitution, come down on drugs or whatever, and it just means to restrict that particular crime. Now, if something comes up to the required standards, and that collocates very well with come up to, it means it meets, it satisfies those standards. So it's very similar to live up to, this one. You know, you can say that it didn't live up to my expectations. Expectations collocates very well with live up to. Yeah, the holiday didn't live up to my expectations. It wasn't as good as I had hoped. But you might say the hotel didn't come up to my high standards. Yeah, it was rubbish, too tatty, too dirty, perhaps really poor service, not good enough for me. It doesn't come up to my high standards. Now, if you come up against problems, difficulties, that means you run up against problems, you go up against problems, you are up against problems. So it just means encounter difficulties. If you come in for criticism, criticism collocates very well with come in for, and please learn a lot of these phrasal verbs with the nouns that they collocate with, because that will help you. It will just help you identify them more often and quicker, and it will help you use them correctly more often, because you'll be using the correct collocation. So you can come in for a lot of different negative things, but criticism is the most common one. You can come in for criticism, meaning you can expect a lot of criticism. But you can also be in for and come in for anything negative. So I could say if you don't work hard, you'll be in for some bad marks. Yeah, you'll come in for some bad marks, you'll be in for some bad marks if you don't work hard. So it doesn't have to be criticism, but it does have to be negative. It just means you can expect this negative consequence. Now, if something comes over you, like an emotion, that means you've got carried away. Your anger might come over you, or you might say something like this: I don't know what came over me during that meeting. I'm sorry that I shouted at everybody and stormed out. I don't know what came over me. And it means that some kind of emotion took over. Yeah, very similar to take over here, come over. Some kind of emotion took over your mind and sent you mad. Okay, a bit like get carried away, very similar. Now, if you come back, you return, yeah, come back home, for example. But if you come back to someone, if something comes back to you, then you remember it. You might say, oh, it's not coming back to me. That word isn't coming back to me. Maybe I'll remember it in a few minutes, yeah, something like that. So that means to recall, and if you come back with something, you reply with a certain comment or remark. Okay, you can come back with something. So I was having a go at him, but he came back with a curt reply or something like that. So to reply. If something comes under, it's usually used to mean to be controlled by here, but there are some good collocations as well. If you say that this region comes under the jurisdiction of Essex County Council or whatever, you're going to give the local authority that controls that region. So this region comes under the jurisdiction or it comes under the authority of something like that. But two more things: come under scrutiny and come under pressure. Very common collocations there with come under. So if something comes under scrutiny, it is scrutinized. Yeah, people are scrutinizing it. And if someone comes under a lot of pressure, they get a lot of pressure put on them. Now, something could come between your relationship, maybe with your friend or maybe with your lover. It doesn't have to be either, but very often it could be love, romance. If something comes between you, it spoils your relationship. And so if someone comes between you, it sounds like maybe somebody has had an affair, but it may not be that. I mean, it could be something else. You might even say something like this, you know, they were together for a few months, but in the end, his children came between them. Maybe he has some children from a former relationship, and the children spoilt their relationship in some kind of way. That's not necessarily to blame it on the kids, but I'm just trying to show you that this word, when something comes between you, it splits you up. It breaks you up. So don't forget those phrasal verbs either. To be broken up, to be split up. You might break off your marriage or break off your engagement, something like that. Okay, and I think we have already done come at someone, attack, and come and approach a problem. If you want to, you know, take a picture of the page, then of course, just pause the video, click print screen, and, you know, you'll have it. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, now's the best time to ask, because I can actually see your comments at the moment. But if not, I want to thank everybody for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. And please give me a like if you've enjoyed the class. Subscribe if you want to see more classes like this. I hope that very soon I'll have a lot more videos like this. Thanks everybody. See you all soon.